And a very good Friday to you racing fans. Welcome to Blinkers Off on TVG. I'm Rich Perloff in Los Angeles, sitting in for Matt Carruthers. And you know why? Because Matt has taken his act on the road. He's taken his talents to Altoona, Iowa. It is opening night at Prairie Meadows, and Matt has been dispatched to catch all the action out there. He'll bring it to you, and you'll get 5 times wager rewards points when you play the races from Prairie Meadows this evening out there in the greater Des Moines area. All right, we're going to do a lot of business here in the next 30 minutes. We're going to start by bringing in the publisher of the Paulick Report. That would be, of course, Ray Paulick. You can find it on your website at paulickreport.com. We're going to do a little buzz in the biz with Ray Paulick. Ray, thanks for joining us here on Blinkers Off.
Great to be with you.
Okay, a couple of items to touch on. First of which is Secret Circle having been declared off the Kentucky Derby Trail, one of Bob Baffert's horses not going forward. What do we know about the injury for this runner?
Well, he came out of the Arkansas Derby with a mild injury. It's actually a fracture to the sesamoid, which is going to put him on the sidelines for a while. It's the kind of injury that, depending on how severe it is, could be career-ending, but they're not saying that right now. As of now, he is going to make a return to the races later this year. But he came out of the Arkansas Derby with the injury and will not be on the Triple Crown Trail.
Okay, and we're not going to shed too many tears for Team Baffert because they've got the likely favorite for the race, Bodemeister, going forward. Liaison is out there in Kentucky. They're still keeping an eye on him. And if Castaway were to win the Coolmore Lexington tomorrow at Keeneland, he could be a Derby starter as well.
Yeah, I think Bob Baffert said that this was not a late effort to get into the Derby, but gee, if the horse runs big in the race on Saturday, how can you go against him taking a shot at it? Because he's a very well-bred colt and deserves to take a shot at the Derby distance. He really is one of those that's bred to go 1.25 miles, I think.
It's that time of year, Ray. You know, and I know, sure. Derby fever does very odd things to people. You only get to be a quality 3-year-old once in your racing career, and if you've got a shot at getting into that race, most folks will elect to take it. Other news from Bob Baffert, he's got a very strong filly, Princess Arabella, who has been retired, a perfect 3 for 3 in her racing career, and was looking forward to a start in the Kentucky Oaks. What befell Princess Arabella?
Yeah, this is a soft tissue injury, and it's the kind that, again, you could bring them back from possibly, depending on the severity. And it happens at really a difficult time because it's getting late in the breeding season. You don't really want to breed a first-time filly or mare too late into the breeding season because then it kind of puts you behind schedule in subsequent years. But Baffert said this filly was every bit as good as his 2011 Kentucky Oaks winner. So it's a real shame. It's a blow to the Baffert barn, and it's a real blow to Peachtree Stable and John Ford.
And as you reported, the breeding plans for Princess Arabella not yet reported, but I think it's safe to say she'll be going to one of the top stallions out there.
She's very well bred.
Out there in Kentucky, there is some news in the real estate world as well as the horse racing news. The legendary, iconic Calumet Farm to be sold once again. Mr. Kwiatkowski bought the property about 20 years ago, I guess, and now it is to be resold. What can you tell us about the terms of the sale?
Well, we created quite a stir a couple of days ago when we reported that it was Calumet was in the process of being sold to Brad Kelly, who is on the Forbes list of the richest 400 Americans. He also is one of the largest landowners in America, and he has a very large racing and breeding operation, Bluegrass Hall. Brad Kelly doesn't talk to the press. He's very private. He has not confirmed it with us, but we've had sources very close to the situation that said this sale is in the process of happening. There's been denials from the trust that that manages the Kwiatkowski estate, but we're still pretty confident this deal is going to go through. It hasn't closed yet, but we go back 20 years to when this farm sold at auction, and Mr. Kwiatkowski came in from the Bahamas on his jet. He outbid Esam Ferris $17 million to buy Calumet, and he was treated like a hero by all the people here in central Kentucky, because Calumet Farm is more than just a breeding and racing operation that's won 9 Kentucky Derbies, has had 2 Triple Crown winners. It really is a treasure to the local people here in Kentucky.
And we trust that if this deal goes down, as you have reported, it will continue to be that. So we'll keep our eyes on developments around Calumet Farm. Last topic we're going to touch on, Ray, and you and I talked about this a little bit earlier on, and we could spend this entire show and many more talking about what's going on with the application of race day Lasix. Now, we're having this conversation now because of what happened or did not happen on Monday with the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission. By a 7-7 tied vote,
that's right,
they elected not to go forward with a plan to phase out race day Lasix. So can you tell us a little bit about how that all went down? Why was there an even number of commissioners voting to begin with? And how does this impact the Lasix conversation on a broader national scale?
Well, the interesting thing about the 7-7 vote is that John Ward was previously a member of, he was the 15th member of the commission and has been hired as executive director. So this was his first day on the job. He stepped down from the commission, and Governor Steve Beshear hadn't appointed a new member yet. So there was an even number. It came down to a 7-7 vote. And the national ramifications are, as you know, the Breeders' Cup has elected to eliminate Lasix from 2-year-old races starting this year out in California and in all races in 2013. And the Graded Stakes Committee adopted a similar policy starting this year, but they had to backtrack and put it on hold because local or state racing commissions hadn't made the change. Kentucky was to be the first state to address it. There were hopes by people at the Breeders' Cup and the Graded Stakes Committee that the Kentucky Racing Commission would adopt this new proposal, but they didn't. It's going to be addressed again next month with a slightly watered down version of the same proposal. But as of right now, the move to eliminate Lasix for 2-year-olds next year is dead.
There were a couple of things about your article and about the sequence of events here I found particularly interesting. Procedurally, there was a subcommittee, the Race Day Medication Committee recommended by a 4-1 vote that the phased out plan go forward. The full commission did not agree with that. What I found interesting about your reporting on the topic, Ray, is how adamant the folks were on either side of this issue. Is that what we're left with right now? Is there simply no agreement as between these two sides about how Lasix impacts on our game and how it should be dealt with?
Yeah, it's a very divisive issue. The horsemen, particularly the trainers and veterinarians, both believe that Lasix is a proven medication to help reduce the incidence of internal bleeding in the lungs. And breeders in particular, who dominate the Breeders' Cup board and who at the jockey club level really believe that it's in the best interest of the sport to get rid of Lasix, to get rid of all medication on race day, that it's not really a good image for horse racing to be giving a shot of any drug to a horse 4 hours before it races. So it's a very divisive issue, and the interesting thing is how it's pitted some owners against their own trainers and the veterinarians who work for them. So I expect it to continue to be the kind of issue that's going to raise the level of discord. It doesn't, all this infighting doesn't help the industry, but I'm afraid it's something we're going to have to go through.
One of the things that you mentioned in the article was the fact that there were worries, as among the people who voted against the measure, that by being the first state to adopt a Lasix phase-out, Kentucky would isolate itself, and if other states did not follow suit, then there might be a situation where more horses would be leaving the jurisdiction. What about that?
Well, that's true, and that's why they adopted a last-minute compromise where it basically gave the committee that approved the original bill. It gave that committee the opportunity to go and monitor what other states are doing, and if the other states do not follow suit and come up with a similar policy, they would backtrack and go back to the existing Lasix rule, which allows horses to be treated on race day. So there was kind of an escape clause in the measure that didn't pass, and I'm sure that it'll still be there next month when they address it. The compromise for next month is, instead of all 2-year-old races in 2013, it will be only stakes races in 2013 for 2-year-olds, and then the phase out continues in 2014 with a final ban on Lasix by 2015.
Okay, it's absolutely a lightning rod issue. Should be of interest to all race fans and players and observers because it impacts so many different areas of the sport. Found it very interesting that some of these people were talking about the perception of the game from the outside and how this impacts on that among the public. at large. Appreciate your reporting on it. Ray Paulick from the Paulick Report, paulickreport.com. Thanks again for spending some time with us on Blinkers Off. We're going to be going to our very first break of the program. When we return, do a little handicapping. We'll bring in Todd Schrupp from Lexington, Kentucky, where he's hanging out at Keeneland. So keep tuned to TVG. More Blinkers Off right after this. Welcome back once again to Blinkers Off. Rich Perloff here in Los Angeles. We're going to be going out to Lexington, Kentucky and joining Todd Schrupp out there at Keeneland. Because it is Keeneland, we don't have to wait for the weekend to get graded stakes racing. We got the Doubledogdare, which I just like saying. So I'll say it again, Todd. It's the HILLIARD LYONS Doubledogdare Stakes.
And Doubledogdare had a great racing career here. It took a few stakes at Keeneland a long time ago and has been so honored during the spring meet with a 1 1/16 event for fillies and mares. I don't know if you passed this on to your audience yet, but a major scratch out of today's Doubledogdare. The 4 Principal Roll, who I think you might have selected had that horse been in there, is out. But Principal Roll will be out, and that will leave us with a field of 7 in our feature later today.
Boy, you know me pretty well. I actually was considering that horse, but ultimately decided that the favorite was the horse Pack Attack, and I'm going to land on that one, Todd. Pack Attack, if you look at this horse's lifetime mark on synthetics, what you see, 2 wins, 2 seconds, 2/3 from 7 tries. But if you subdivide a little bit and you look at this horse on synthetic when getting Lasix, look out. 2 big wins and a good second in a Grade 1 right there at Keeneland.
Yeah, and it was a very good second at the SPINSTER last fall that you're alluding to. And then her next start was against Royal Delta. And look, I was on the work show leading up to the Breeders' Cup. Before the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic, I saw exactly what Royal Delta was doing, but I had to go back to Patch Attack. I made her my pick for the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic because I love this effort in the SPINSTER where she was second, beaten a half, and I thought Patch Attack could make the transfer to the conventional dirt. Now, she did run an okay third. Royal Delta was dominant, but I had a hard time liking her for the Breeders' Cup Ladies Classic and then all of a sudden not picking her today for the Doubledogdare. She makes a lot of sense. Now look, it's going back a ways, but when she won the Maple Leaf back in 2010 at Woodbine, she went gate to wire. The reason I think that's important is because there's very little pace in this race. They might take Joyful Victory to the lead to the outside here, but just tactically, I think Patch Attack has everything you want. Last year in the SPINSTER, when she rallied, it was a very quick pace for that 1 1/8. They got to the half in 46-2. Nothing like that today. We could see a half mile shading 49 today. They're going to be going slow in this race. The slower they go, I think the better it will be for Patch Attack. But whatever you throw at her, she's the horse to beat. So I'm with you. Once Principal Roll was out, I didn't see a total logical alternative. Some could make a case for the 7 Sea Level Drive, who's 2 for 2 here at Keeneland, and the 1 1/16 distance may be more her game than that of Patch Attack, who's a horse you'd have to say is probably better at a 1 1/8 or further, because we haven't really seen this horse compete consistently at a 1 1/16. But on class, total standout.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The horse that I kept looking at, and I'm still looking at, quite frankly, is the number 2 horse here, Cathman Blue. She was so good. She got so good for a time late in her 2-year-old campaign and early in her 3-year-old season. What has befallen Cathman Blue, do you reckon, Todd? And do you think there's a chance that she could snap back on a surface where she is Grade 1 placed?
Yeah, you never see this in the past performances, do you? Liver problems. She had some issues that sent her to the sidelines, and Ken McPeak said she's thrived since then. They gave her the time off that she needed. She's put on weight, but he kind of emphasizes the fact that this is a good starting point for the year. I have to be honest with you. I hope for my friend Evan Trommer, who's the man behind 5D Thoroughbreds and a big TVG supporter. He's probably at his house here in Lexington watching this show right now. Evan, I love your son Drew as well as workforce, but I just don't see it today. And I think they're very realistic about where she starts here. So she had an ailment that sent her to the sidelines. They've given her plenty of time. She is a talented horse, but I do question a little bit that 3-year-old filly group from last year, at least where Cathman Blue was. She wasn't at the top of that division. She was more like second tier. Given her problems, given the starting point, I don't see her pulling off the upset here. If I'm going to look towards an upset, it would be the 7 Sea Level Drive.
Okay, we both like the favorite in there. That is Patch Attack, 9-5 on the morning line, and a key scratch of the Bill Mott-trained Principal Roll. Let's keep it there at Keeneland and take a look at tomorrow's feature. It's the Coolmore Lexington Stakes. we may get a Derby starter out of this field, and that's a little bit unusual because that has not been the way of things in the last couple of years. But even if that's not the case with Castaway, Todd, I thought this race was very intriguing as a standalone and as a handicapping challenge.
Yeah, you were talking about to the Bob Baffert barn, and look, they've already kind of got the table set for the Kentucky Derby. I'm sure Castaway is a horse that they would like to get there. But let's say on kind of a side note, Castaway doesn't owe Bob Baffert anything. Some people would say Castaway saved Bob Baffert's life. If you recall, he got up to watch the Sunland Derby when he got to Dubai, and it's because he had set his schedule to get up and watch that race that he started realizing he was having health problems, ultimately ended up in the hospital. But if not for Castaway in this Sunland Derby, who knows how that might have played out. So this horse owes Bob Baffert nothing. As far as how to play this race, I don't play Castaway in here. I just don't see it. I mean, this horse had 2 starts on the polytrack at Del Mar. Yes, it's a different polytrack than what we have here at Keeneland, even though it's in name only the same. But I just believe this horse was over the top in the Southwest, major bounce in the Sunland Derby, and coming back to polytrack is where I don't think this horse is going to regain his form. I'm with you. This is a very intriguing race because I think there are some lightly raced horses who need to obviously win this race to get in the Kentucky Derby and think about it. But my whole premise for the Coolmore Lexington tomorrow, no Castaway on my ticket.
Okay, and with that, which of the price horses did you land on?
Well, Johannes Bourbon is a horse that broke his maiden at Turfway Park in his first start. Look, to go from 6.5 furlongs to a mile and a 16th, I get it. To go from a maiden win into a grade 2 race like the Coolmore Lexington, I get it. But how often do you see a horse go 6.5 furlongs at this time of meet at Turfway Park and 1:16.4? You add to that fact that Kellen Gorder has a horse that can stretch out and is a trainer who does well with horses stretching out off sprints like this. And here's the other factor, weather. Today you're going to see the temperature here around 75 degrees. It's going to cool off nearly 20 degrees tomorrow. We're going to see temperatures about 60 degrees tomorrow, rainy, about a 60% chance, and you know what happens when it gets cold with polytrack. It tightens up, speed is very, very good, so I'm betting on the come on a number of things. I think Johannes Bourbon can get the 2 turns. I think this horse is going to love the conditions here tomorrow because it's going to be cold, frigid, and I think it'll favor horses like Johannes Bourbon, so I'm taking a shot with that horse. Where are you going?
Well, Todd, the poet once said, "In spring, a young man's fancy lightly turns to thoughts of love." You know where my thoughts turn? They turn to my favorite angle in the handicapper's toolbox, and I'm going there right now. It's what we call My How You've Grown. This is the time of year for My How You've Grown. We're looking for talented 2-year-olds making their first start at age 3, and I've got a perfect example in the Coolmore Lexington. That's the number 2 horse, Summer Front. Ramon Dominguez is going to ride this one for Christophe Clement. How can you knock this horse's accomplishments? 3 starts, 3 wins, 2 wins going long. He's never run on a synthetic racetrack, but I got a feeling that Christophe Clement knows when turf horses are ready to move over to the synthetic. Gio Ponte is a horse that comes to mind. And Summer Front, as a 2-year-old, was putting up numbers that are very similar to the best 3-year-old accomplishments of the other horses in this field. If he comes back the bigger, stronger version of what we saw on the turf in Florida and New York last year, I think he's going to be a very, very good play, and I would love 4.5 to 1.
In that effort we watched down the Dania Beach, we didn't see the best part of that. He overcame a horrible start in that race. We picked it up down the stretch when he got rolling. The other thing to think about, with him giving up some ground early in that race, the turf course down in Hallandale at Gulfstream Park was speed favoring the early part of that meet, December, January, and February. So for him to rally like that was one of the few horses to rally on that turf course and be successful. My problem is I like your My How Have We Grown, but I didn't know how to translate that 2-year-old form on the grass to today. But as you said, with the polytrack, maybe it's a non-issue, but there's no doubt Christophe Clement can bring horses back off lengthy layoffs, and for that horse to go maiden win to 2-time stakes winner, be undefeated, that was the other horse I was thinking about. I wanted to go a little bit bigger than the 9-2, but for me it was Johannes Bourbon or Summer Front, and hopefully one of us will be right.
Well, let's get them both on the ticket. One more point about Summer Front with regard to the synthetic. This is a half-brother to a horse called Lara, who was a 2-time winner on synthetic, including the Hollywood Starlet. So you got that going for you. At least the mare has produced a horse that ran big on a synthetic racetrack. We got one more to talk about, Todd. It is the Jerome. That's a grade 2 at Aqueduct, a 1-turn mile there. Nice field assembled. 7 will go the Lumber Guy, who was 5th after leading early in the Grade 1 Wood Memorial behind Derby hopefuls Gemologist and Alpha is the morning line favorite. Do you like the Lumber Guy, or are you looking for a price?
Rich, the one thing about toolboxes, and you'll know this because we've all had those neighbors who come over and borrow tools. Sometimes your tools disappear from the handicapping toolbox. So I went over to my neighbor, Simon Bray. It was the gated community, but he sent the security guard out with a wrench from his toolbox. His toolbox says this: when you have a horse like the Lumber Guy, who's a brilliant sprinter, and then they try and make him do something he doesn't want to do, like going in the Wood Memorial and essentially being a rabbit in there, when they come back to their natural distance, they're fried. Mentally, they're not there. They're a runoff horse, and they're not as good as they were. So I'm going into the Simon Bray toolbox. I'm borrowing an angle, and I'm going to play against the Lumber Guy in here. And then also by doing this, I can blame Simon if he's wrong.
Okay, well, there's always good reason to blame Simon for something. Bob Baffert's got a pair in there. He's got Brigand, who's going to put the blinkers right back on after a one-race experiment without. And he's got Stirred Up, who was 3rd behind Daddy Knows Best in that Sunland Derby. Either of the Baffert horses attractive to you here?
No, I'm going to kind of stay with the East Coast horses in there. Brigand was a horse that I watched at the start of his career out in California, and I know that they loved him, but then again, Bob Baffert loves all of his horses, and the horse has shown some ability. The blinkers on today, but a New York bred that I'd like to just see him win the Empire Classic by the end of the year. As for Stirred Up, I don't think launching from far back is a good move in the one-turn mile, so I'm going to go to the My Have We Grown angle in here a little bit. Right to Vote off the 2-year-old form, raced in the Champagne, came back in his 3-year-old debut and won at Gulfstream Park. Look, they run 1:16 and 4 for fun down there, but I thought it was a good race because Right to Vote sat off a very fast pace and just held on for the win. There's so much upside. Remember, he'd been off from October to March. I think Right to Vote moves forward. I think he sits in that second flight, not too far back from the Lumber Guy, and if the Lumber Guy is, well, just burnt out from his effort in the Wood Memorial and comes back, Right to Vote gets first jump. I'll take a bit of an upset at 5-1 with Right to Vote in the Jerome.
You are welcome to borrow my tools anytime. By the way, are you
and
a
I will
fix-it guy?
return them.
Do you fix stuff? I can't fix anything. Do you fix stuff?
Please tell me you watch Mad Men, because I am Pete Campbell when it comes to fixing things. That was on the last episode. He fixed a drip, and then it blew up later in the kitchen on his wife, and then Don Draper had to come in and actually do the fix it the right way. Yeah. I'm Pete Campbell from Mad Men.
Yeah, I absolutely am a master of picking up the phone and calling people who know how to accomplish home improvement projects. I'm going to the 6-horse here, Adirondack King. I've had my eye on this horse ever since his 3rd place finish in the Pasco. I think he's got more ability, Todd, than he was able to show going around 2 turns at Oaklawn Park. He's back in a 1-turn race. And, you know, John Service and Kendrick Carmouche, you're talking to a guy who watches a lot of racing from Parks. These guys can click at a price. I think Adirondack King is back in a much better spot.
I love that. Kendrick Carmouche coming up to Aqueduct. I'm with you, and 12-1's too big of a number on that horse. I like the fact that we're both taking a stand against the Lumber Guy for various reasons.
All right, that's a look at the Jerome. That is our handicapping segment. We say thank you very much to Todd Schrupp for joining us. Let's recap the picks from last week. Matt and Ray were on board there. Reading Colliery checking in. Well, okay, Mr. Mardi Gras finishing 3rd in the Charlestown Classic. Oh, you're still there, Todd. You can weigh in on any of this. The Arkansas Derby. Matt, like stat? 6th in there. There we go. Now we got a Doublehan fan. Todd, very briefly, what do you think about Doublehan going forward? Is he a horse that's on your radar?
Look, I mean, I'm liking him more than I did previously, but let's face it, Hansen wasn't exactly offering resistance down the stretch. So don't look at that bluegrass as something that you should get too excited about. So you know, I don't want to be too middle of the road. I'll say I'm still leaning negative. Look, He ran a better race in the bluegrass than I thought, but I don't think it means he's one of the favorites for the Derby. I don't see it. I'm
leaning positive, quite frankly. I think his 4th place finish in last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile really looks pretty good right now. I don't have any qualms, and I'm hearing a lot of folks expressing qualms about his ability to run big at top levels on the dirt. I'm leaning positive towards Doublehan, who showed me in the bluegrass that he's pretty nimble and can weave his way through a big field. So that's my position right now. I reserve the right to reverse course at any moment. All right.
Well, just show you how negative and jaded I am. his effort in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, I think, was aided by a track that favored his running style. I like the fact that a horse that can overcome trouble, but I think closers were dominating Breeders' Cup weekend with the exception of one Hansen. Speaking of trouble, the late double is here today at Keeneland, and I get a chance to be on the show today. It's the season debut of the late double, and I have to say it's probably the best show they put together. I've been in the production meetings. They're going to have fun giveaways. They're going to have a huge crowd out here because they have a special area set up for them at Keeneland, a crowd just there for the late double. So you got to tune in for this. When I told my wife that I was going to be on the season premiere, she goes, "Oh, you play the role of the old guy." Thanks, honey.
Fun is the name of the game. The late double, it's kind of a mid-afternoon double today. You'll catch it on TVG. Matt Carruthers is back next week on Blinkers Off. Thanks for watching, everybody.